So we're going to be talking about Chimney Sweeper first. The first Chimney Sweeper poem, which is 1459. Additionally, you could just probably type in like Chimney Sweeper Blake if you wanted to follow along like on a device and you don't have your book with you. The reason I don't assign these is because they're for writing that people can write about, is because people always say the most boring things about them or they misread them. It's really weird how a lot of poems involving religion people misread. Because people always look at a poem about religion that's saying disparaging things about religion, and if you're really religious, you often will just reinterpret it as positive religion. And then you go, I love what it's saying about religion here. And it's like literally saying religion's kind of sucky, at least at this time period. I don't know if it's necessarily saying that here, but I believe it is even in this one. So it's from the perspective of a child who is a chimney sweeper. And I should say really quickly that like chimneys, like they use children to sweep chimneys because children are smaller. I was going to say taller. Children are much smaller than adults, so they can fit down chimneys. So they would take the kid, and they like lower him down the chimney, and the kid would go down and sweep the chimney out, all the ash and soot out of the chimney. And you can imagine that wasn't very healthy, and often would kill people. And by people, I mean children. So the poem goes, when my mother died, I was very young. And I always do it in the child's form. And my father sewed me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Decker, who cried when his head that curled like a lamb's back was shaved. So I said, hush, Tom, never mind it. For when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run, and wash in a river, and shine in the sun. Then naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. So it sounds like it's like, that is right. If they just work hard and do what their duty is, they'll get to go to heaven and the angels will let them up there. So that's something nice to think about. However, it's a poem about children who are going to die early because they've been forced into servitude. But this is like from their perspective. It's still in that Songs of Innocence part of the book, where the Songs of Innocence, is usually from the perspective of the speaker. It's an innocent view at whatever we're looking at. So it's a little kid's like, what? We're going to get to go to heaven. It's going to be nice. We have to wash all this soot off. Who cares? Hey, it doesn't matter that they shaved off your white hair. Now you're not going to get it dirty. There you go. But you have no hair. Like, it's almost like somebody said, like if your house burnt down, and somebody said, hey, look at the bright side. Nobody can vandalize your house. Because you don't have one anymore. Like, what? Like, it's totally not a good trade-off. It's like, I don't have my hair anymore. Yeah, but it can't get messed up now, I guess. It's almost like cut your arm off, and it's like, but think about this. You'll never bump your arm on stuff anymore. Like, that's never going to happen, Much rather have something and risk it getting messed up than not have it and not have it messed up. So yeah, it's very, very dark poem, and I'm pretty sure that this whole poem is meant to be sort of tongue-in-cheek. Where like they're innocent, thinking like, oh look at, and it's almost set up almost like it reminded me of something like A Christmas Carol, where like there's the whole like going into the path, but like this dream of like the angel coming. It feels very like, even though it's a dream, it feels almost supernatural. Like it feels like It's almost like being visited in your sleep by an actual angel, not like even a dream, really. And so this one sounds kind of positive on it. Oh, okay. I thought I left my phone on. I mean, it is on. It's just not. But let's look at the other one now. The other Chimney Sweeper poem, which is on 1465 in my book. Should be pretty close in your book. This one's quite a bit darker. And kind of even talks about the origins for how the kid became a chimney sweeper in this one. The other one was like, my mother died, right? So that was... They're like, what do we do with this kid? Orphan? And then the chimney sweeper company is like, we'll buy the orphans. We'll buy as many as you got. We got chimneys to sweep. This one's a little darker. It says, a little black thing among the snow, crying, weep, weep, in notes of woe. Where are thy... Oh, wait, this one's not a kid. Oh, no, yeah. Oh, no, it's an adult. Hold on, I got to start over. A little black thing among the snow, crying, weep, weep, in notes of woe. Where are thy father and mother, say? They are both gone up to the church to pray. And because I was happy upon the heath, and smiled among the winter's snow, they clothed me in the clothes of death, and taught me to sing the notes of woe. And because I am happy, and dance and sing, they think they have done me no injury, and are gone to praise God and his priest and king, who make up a heaven of our misery. Oh, good heavens. Like, this one's bad. So, this was like, it's like, hey, where's your mom and dad? Little kid, like, all decked out in black from being a chimney sweeper. He's like, covered in like the soot and ash. I'm like, where's your mom and dad? And he's like, yeah, I used to be happy, but basically what happened is they sold their kid. Like, I guess they couldn't afford to feed him, so they sold him, so they got money for him. But now they get to, like, go have the leisure time to, like, go to church and, because they sold their kid into servitude. And this kid's going to just end up dying. And they're going to spend their time going to church and saying, praise the Lord, when they sold their child's death to somebody. Happy, huh? Blake was pissed. Like, he didn't seem too happy at the time with what religion had done, I think, to people, and how people essentially used it as a shield to do bad things, which he saw happening quite a bit. Probably the biggest place. So, of course, Tiger had that whole question of how could a good God allow evil to exist. But if we look a couple more pages over at 1469 London, his view of London at the time, very, very dark, very, very sad. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. And I should mention here, when he says chartered, essentially it's like owned and sold and used to make a profit. So it says every street essentially is not just a street. It basically is owned by somebody, and that they use it to make a profit. Not only that, the river seems to be almost owned by somebody now. The Thames is how it's pronounced. And now he says he looks at every single face he sees, weakness and woe, and the marks of their faces. And he says, in every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged monocles I hear. And mind-forged monocle is a great way of putting it. It's like, I think there's a lot of people who think that, like, when I was young, I thought that, well, no, let's stop here, I guess. When I was young, I thought that, I'd heard it all growing up. I thought that people who were on, like, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, food stamps, those kind of things, they just want to be on there. They want to be lazy and, like, not taken care of. And if they really wanted to, they could just go out and work, get a job, and that would be over, right? But people often forget, the mind-forged monocles. There are exceptions to the rule. I was listening to a podcast once about, there was this kid, and, like, his mom was a druggie, and she barely took care of them. But the kid, the young boy, was like a middle school boy, like 6th grade, worked really, really hard to basically take care of his mother so that him and his sister wouldn't get taken away by CPS and then broken up from their mom's like misdoings. And what ended up happening was he couldn't keep that from happening. He was a really, really smart kid, and he got into this academy, but ended up getting kicked out of the academy, not because of he wasn't any good, but because the mom ended up getting caught by CPS, not doing what she was supposed to. She was on drugs, and so they took the kids into the foster system and split them up, him and his sister. So he spent like almost all of his time trying to get to his, but he didn't live in the zone now where he could even go to that school. He was fostered in some area really far away from the school, so he couldn't go to this private school anymore. There was some magical program, like not magical, but some like, fortunately for them, some program that looked for kids like this that were really smart in the system but were getting missed by things like this constantly happening. And they offered to move him into like some sort of specific foster home with his sister there. I think maybe he's trying to get back to her still, but like now he's in like 8th grade and he's on this track to go to this gifted high school, and he's already like figured out what college he wants to go to, and he's been talking to them already as an 8th grader. And he's going to apply once he gets to like a senior year in high school. But this kid is the exception to the rule. This is not the rule. People who, I mean, look at two. I mean, he was doing everything he could, and the mom, you can't, if your mom's a druggie, you can't just overcome that. And chances are most kids whose parents are druggies will end up becoming druggies themselves. You become what you see in your parents usually. And so I grew up thinking that, you know, people who were on welfare, they just wanted it. And they didn't want to overcome it. And in most cases, it's that they literally don't know anything else. And it takes the exception to the rule to not be a victim of the mind-forged monocles. A lot of people, if you're down, you stay down. You think you're down and it's hard to overcome it. I mean, imagine a kid who's been bullied, right? A kid who's been bullied, they're told they're nothing. Yes, it'd be great if they could just overcome with confidence and think, you know what, I am great and I don't care what they say. I've realized later in life that I kind of was bullied a little bit, but it never really got to me because this sounds terrible, but I knew I was smart. And most of the ones who were bullying me weren't. And so I kind of had a future, and they maybe didn't. So I knew that kind of from a certain perspective. And I was like, this kid's going to be, you know, still sweeping floors at 30, and I'll have a pretty decent, you know, job. And I get to do what I love. I know you disagree.
My fiance is like that exception. It's his mom and stepdad.
Yeah.
And, well, you know his sister. You talked about her in 1302. And all of his siblings, I mean, his brother just got out of the hospital from ICU because of him. But Dylan, he works hard. He's trying to get his own house. I mean, he still lives with me, but he's definitely not them at all. So I guess he's, like you said, he's the exception.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of us know an example of the exception. And because we want that to be the case with all people, we tend to think of the exception that we see as the rule. And that's something that we do all the time. Did I mention this the other day where, like, you know, like every hardcore, like, Democrat is against guns until they or somebody really close to them is in a situation where either they're robbed at gunpoint or they're raped. And if they had just had a weapon to defend themselves, they think maybe. And so, like, then they go, oh, I'm okay with guns now. Or you have a conservative family, very religious, against gay marriage rights. No gay marriage rights, stupid. And then they have a gay son. And suddenly all their beliefs are still completely conservative, but now they understand why gays should be allowed to marry. You know, it's like everybody, we have that one little thing that we've had a personal experience with that flips us over our normal political beliefs because we've had that personal experience. And, like, I've seen, because as a teacher, you have a unique position where you see tons of people come through. Just tons of people. And that's something that a lot of people don't get. You don't get the experience of just constantly having people thrown at you from various walks of life to see, like, what people go through. And people go through a lot. Like, I have students who, you know, they got pregnant as a teen. Their mom got pregnant as a teen. Why would they do anything different? You know, it's something that, like, you know, if you like your mom, you love your mom, you don't want to believe that she's wrong. I mean, you don't do the precautions that she never taught you the precautions. It's just one of those things where it becomes a mind forged monocles. Everybody's stuck in the life they have unless they somehow figure out how to pick this mind forged manacle lock and just get out of it.
Yeah, because Dylan's not like his parents, but my whole family on my dad's side is like that. Like they're all, they watch their parents do it. So I guess I agree and disagree.
Yeah, there's an agreement and disagreement. However, he'll probably still only ever get so high or so much higher than the amount of money that his parents, like me, like my parents, like my dad owned his own lawn business, right? And he still does. So it didn't make a whole lot of money because there's big ones in here. Have you ever seen like Cutters or like Newman's Lawn Care? No, Newman's Lawn Care might be Commerce. There's Cutters here in Greenville, and I can't remember the other one. It's been so long since I've talked to him about it. But so he doesn't make that much money. And I had, got a college degree and a master's degree, and I went and got a job. But because I grew up without much money, I never really felt the need to have a whole lot of money. And he might end up being the same. If he grew up with not much money, he might, like, it's very, I don't feel like the need to go out and get a job where I could become a millionaire. Like, I didn't want to.
He plays around all the time, and he's like, oh no, I'm high class now. I got out of that situation. I'm high
Right,
class.
right.
And I'm like, Dylan, stop.
And well, I'm not saying that I'm high class.
No.
I was trying not to. I was hoping I didn't sound like that.
I came from where I came from, so
Yeah.
now I have that right to say that.
But it's like, it's partly too. It's like, you think of where you come from. There's a lot of pride in where we come from, right? So like, I actually think like I have a lot of pride in my upbringing. Luckily for my parents, like they really like paid attention to us and cared for us, encouraged us to go out and do what we wanted to do. Granted, my dad was like, an English teacher? You could have done computers, is what he kept telling me over and over again. And I was like, But it's so much of our lives, we're strapped to something we can't even see. It's one of the reasons people go on like mission trips, right? Have you ever been on, or know people who've gone on mission trips? Like, it's because you go to an area where people live the lives they live and they've never seen anything else, and so you try to go and offer them something different. Like, hey, there's this Jesus guy. Usually I'm thinking Christian mission trips. There's this Jesus guy, and he, he's great. He can make your life easier, and you could have like some purpose, and you're like, oh, really? That's cool. Like, and before it had just been nothing but sweeping chimneys. And so it's very difficult to get outside of these mind forged monocles, and that's what he's recognizing. He's realizing that all these people are in a bad situation, and while there may technically be a way out of it, these people aren't going to just figure that out on their own. I mean, you have to be sort of the exception to the rule. And I was going somewhere particular with something about, I don't know, some statistics about Medicare and Medicaid and all that, but I can't remember exactly where I was going with that. But just in general, people who come from nothing tend to stay with nothing, and it's just how people with money tend to keep money. It's just one of those weird things. Very few people completely cross a class line fully, like from high to low or low to high. You might go from like lower middle class to middle class. Yeah, it's not gonna, you're gonna never just jump like 50 classes. It's just rare. Sometimes you win the lottery and you're still somehow like, you ever notice how people who win the lottery, a lot of them just end up blowing all the money and end up poorer than they were before because now they're in debt because they got used to having money and then actually started going into debt trying to keep that lifestyle and like bought like 20 houses and stuff like that. Because that's the poor mindset, which is, I have money, I better spend it before I don't have it anymore. Because that's, have you ever noticed how people get their tax money back and will go buy like a television? And it's all gone. And like what you could have done is pay off those things you owe or like rent. But the landlord, he wasn't there that weekend, so you couldn't give him the rent money, so you went and bought something instead irresponsibly. It's just this weird, like it's hard to like just wake up one day and go, you know what would be smart? Financial literacy. It's like nobody just wakes up and thinks that. So he's starting to recognize this, Blake is in London, that the system itself is keeping people down, and that they just don't even realize how to get out of their own situations. And he says, how the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace wall. It's one of my favorite 4 lines in literature. But so he's saying, like, every chimney sweeper that's crying is every blackening church of Paul's. So every church that's out there is essentially, with the people that are in it, that are going to it, they're giving their money to the church, yet also the same ones that are allowing these little chimney sweeper kids to sweep chimneys. It almost goes back to the idea of John Donne, which is not in this semester, he's in previous semester, but he basically said everybody's lives matters to every single other person. It's like, he says something like, if a clod were washed off of England, England would be the less. As much as a promontory were, or like, if a state blew off the United States is the less. If a dirt clod falls off the United States, it's smaller. So he says every single person should matter to every single other person. Anything that happens to them, a death, a sickness. And so really, if you think about this here, if the church not doing everything it can to save these little children who are sweeping chimneys is a problem. He's saying the church is like what all of the culture's centered around, and it's allowing this to happen and not trying to save these children. So the church is blackened by the soot of every chimney sweeper child. And it says, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. So like every soldier that's fighting for this church is also, the blood is essentially painted on the walls of the, and it's interesting that he doesn't talk about the blood of Jesus here. He talks about the soldier's blood as the one that's really running down the walls. Like this church was built and lives off of the soot that children sweep out of chimneys, off of the blood of soldiers that runs, essentially down the walls that built this thing and keeps it running. And he has a real problem with that. I think he would have a problem these days with like churches that have turned a blind eye to. I'm going to be very clear with you guys. I was clear with another class. I tend not to say to people, like tell people whether I, vote Democrat or Republican. I do vote, even in the primaries, because I don't feel like it's my job to, like, essentially preach to you about like how you should vote, how you should think. Because I don't think that I should teach you how to think for yourselves. And if you come, whatever conclusion you come to, I think that that's proper. However, I will tell you straight up that I think Donald Trump is an idiot. I don't think that anybody who's not qualified to be a president should be a president. That's not just for Trump. I'm saying, like, you're hearing about Oprah. Where I was like, Oprah should run for president after something she said at some awards. Oprah should not be president. Mark Cuban should not be president. The Kardashians. Mark Zuckerberg. Like, I don't care what their beliefs are. You don't just vote for the one you think is the most famous one on your team. That's not how this works. You need to vote for somebody who's qualified, knows what they're doing. And to be honest, Trump does not. I heard about a Trump, what do you call it? There was a cabinet meeting about DACA, the dreamers, children who were born here, or not born here, but children who were brought here as children, had no choice in the matter, have grown up here, and DACA tries to keep them here instead of having them deported when found. So a Democrat mentioned in this meeting, this bipartisan meeting, said, well, I just want to make sure that there is a path to citizenship available for these children who are born here, and so can we have that in the bill? And Trump was like, yeah, I think that's a very good idea. It's a very good idea. And then, like, the way that she had phrased it, I guess he didn't really, like, I don't think he really understands the policies that he's supposed to be supporting, because the guy next to him, Republican next to him, went, actually, what she's saying is this, and we don't believe that. He goes, oh, yeah, right, we don't believe that. But he had no idea, because he's not qualified. And the reason I'm saying this, and the point of this, is that I think Blake would have a huge problem these days with conservative Christians supporting a thrice married man who had an affair with a porn star while married to his second wife, but pregnant with the third. It's all that he's a cheater, liar, all kinds of stuff. And it's very, he would have a huge problem with all the people who are essentially giving the guy a free pass, despite obviously not being a very good Christian. In terms of, I think, what he would think if he came to today and was looking at what we have here, is I think what Blake's problems would be. I'm just speaking from Blake's perspective, or trying to speak from Blake's perspective, because I'm trying to, like, give him a voice now, and relate this to something we have going on these days. And he says, but most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. And what that means is, like, you have young, women, essentially, it says harlot, and I've often heard that to mean two different things, so I don't know exactly what you mean. Like, it could be either prostitute or someone who's just really promiscuous. with whomever they sleep with. And he's saying that like the sleeping with is actually causing, it says infant's tear is talking about prenatal blindness resulting from a parent's venereal disease by earlier infection from the harlot. So the children being born to this harlot are men going to women and then coming home and then having sex with their own wives and then spreading it to them is causing these children to be born with prenatal blindness. And so like there's spreading venereal disease and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. And it says in the book that it doesn't necessarily mean like a hearse, like for death, like we think of it these days. I actually disagree. I like to think of it better that way since we have that new meaning. Because you have like a marriage hearse, which would be like carriage that takes you away. But I love thinking about it as that both a marriage, like carriage, like, oh, we just got married, and also the thing that will bring you, like, you're dead. I love that, like, combined image. So it's saying getting married is already blighted with a plague because somebody who's getting married has already got the venereal disease. So when they have a child, it's going to be hurt by this venereal disease. And I think he thinks that all of this stuff happening can be blamed on the church, and it's turning a blind eye and not paying attention to the needs of others, more paying attention to its own edification and how do we get this to be built bigger, more stained glass, more gold, because God wants more gold on the walls. He doesn't want us to take care of the sick. There was no part of the Bible where God said, like, take care of the sick or the poor. Was there? Did you just ever say that? Take care of the sick and the poor? I can't remember. It's just something, I don't know. Maybe that's not covered. I don't remember. Jesus might have said something about it. Maybe not. And when I'm just talking about, because Blake was very religious in all these poems, I think you have to be very clear about like how he was viewing things religiously at the time. And that's not necessarily the views that I'm saying, or not necessarily my views, but they're what I think would be his views based on what I read here. So that gets us, I think, through Blake and all the things you would need to know to do the Blake quizzes. But let's go to Burns and see if we can figure out what the heck is this. I swear there'll be some times where I'm not just completely depressing you all the time. Like, I realize it's good. Like, gosh, Engl, it's pretty dark. But Blake is dark. So we got to get through the darkness of Blake and get to the fun of Robert Burns. I really think that both of these poems, To a Mouse and To a Louse, are kind of silly poems. When you really get at them. They have a very simple moral. I'd say the most really interesting thing about them is how they brought essentially what it meant to be Scottish into like the public eye, or like made it somehow Scottishness became relevant, or like it wasn't just like subservient to English literature. Suddenly, like Robert Burns was taking it into the popular, like mainstream. And when he started writing this stuff and published it, immediately people praised him as a genius. Like it was just like overnight as soon as he wrote this thing. But if you think about it, he incorporates the slang, the accent. I actually think it helps a lot if you read this out loud to understand it. Because I don't see how you really could just read it with your eyes and still get what it means. I think it kind of comes out of hearing how the sounds sound together. You can almost hear sentences start. So it says, To a Mouse, on turning her up in her nest with the plow, November 1785. Now it's written clearly in English, so you can see. Okay, so he's writing a poem to the mousie after he's turned her up in her nest because he was using the plow and then popped her nest over. Oh, darn it. Poor mouse. Busted her home up. Let's write a poem to this mouse. We sleek it car and timorous beastie. Oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou need not start away so hasty with bicker and brattle. I would be loth to run and chase thee with murder and pattle. So, if you could figure out anything that was just said there. It's essentially he's saying, small, sleek, cowering, timorous beastie. Kind of timorous meaning like timorous, shivering. Oh, what a panic is in thy breast. You don't need to start away so hastily. With bickering brattle, which I actually have to look down below to see what that, with headlong scamper. So like really fast, like getting out of there quick. I would be loath to run and chase thee with some murdering, and I think paddle's fine, instrument, something meant to harm you. It's like, don't worry, I'm not going to be like chasing after you Like, in fact, I really don't want to chase after you and kill you. I know that I'm a human, you're a mouse, but I have no plans for this. And he says, I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union, and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. That actually seems like that one made sense. Because I'm truly sorry that, man's dominion over nature has broken the social union that we have here and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle. Like, man has essentially decided he's more important, and so this little thing he broke up is his fault. He's sorry that man's dominion over nature, which is unavoidable, has caused this. At me, which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. We're the same, you and me. We're both mortals. So he's just trying to relate to this mouse. Like, my bad on your house. I'm a human, though. We have to have dominion over nature. That's what we do. We got to plow it up. We got to turn it, make a field out of it. Or not make a field out of it, make a crop out of it. It's just what we do. I doubt no wiles, but thou may thieve. What then, poor beastie? Thou mun live. A diamond icker and a thrave's a small request. I'll get a blessing with the leave and never miss it. So he said, I doubt not, sometimes, but you probably steal from me. What then, poor beast? You gotta live, right? That's why you're stealing my food from me. A dime or a nicker and a thrave. I think it says 1 ear of corn or something out of an occasional ear and 24 sheaves. So 24 sheaves of corn, 1 ear of corn will occasionally go missing. That's nothing. You're not gonna notice that. He says, that's a small request you make of me. I'll still be blessed with just the leavings that you leave behind me after you steal as much as you want, and I'd never miss it. Wouldn't even know, So it's no big deal. You can steal food from me anytime you want. Or not really. I don't know if he says that, but he says you steal food from me, and I get it when you do. So he's like, you didn't have to worry about me coming after you to kill you because of that. They wee bit housey too in ruin. It's silly walls the wind's destroying, and nothing now to big and new on the foliage green, and bleak December's winds and so on, but snell and keen. It says the little bitty house too, it's in ruin. Oh no, you've been turned up, and also your house has been ruined. It's silly walls, or silly meaning not a whole lot of structure to it. Oh, frail it says there. It's silly the frail walls the winds are strewing. Because, it was made of grass and hay and junk, and now these walls are just blown away. You gotta go track them back down again. And it'd be nothing now to build a new one of Foggage Green. And I don't know what he means by nothing now. I think he means that the opposite of what you'd think. It'd be nothing to build a new one. It wouldn't take a lot of effort. I think he means really there's no possibility that you even could build a new one of Foggage Green, because that's not going to work. He says, with bleak December's winds ensuing, both bitter and sharply cold. So it'd be very difficult at this point. Thou saw the fields laid bare and waste, and weary winter coming fast, and cozy here beneath the blast thou thought to dwell, till crash the cruel coulter passed out through thy sail. He's like, you saw the fields here bare and laid waste. You're like, all the farming's done, no big deal. We'll just come in here. When the winter is coming quickly, I better get myself some shelter. And you thought, I'll just cozy here beneath the blast. I'll just dwell here, and then boom, here comes my cutting thing. Or no, it's not that. It's plow. Out through thy cell. Basically every movie where you see some small CGI creature. Something big and human starts coming for you. I feel like that had to have happened in a Pixar movie at some point, where there was some tiny little thing, it was affected by a bigger thing. Kind of how I view it. It says, that wee bit heap of leaves and stubble has cost thee many a weary nibble. Now thou's turned out for all thy trouble, but house or hold, to toll the winter sleety dribble and chronic cold. So it's this little heap of leaves and stubble has cost you many a weary nibble. It took you a lot of and then bring it over here with your mouth and set it there, and then get some more, and then bring it over there and set it there. It took a while to build. You don't even have thumbs. Now you're turned out for all that trouble you took building it. Now you're just turned out. Without house or home, or really land, I think, maybe hold. Yeah, land. To toil, it says toil, and it translates that to endure. I don't really like that pronunciation. I like the word toil. To toil through the winter's sleety dribble and hoarfrost cold. I actually think of Cronrich being like, have you played Skyrim before? Yeah. Cranberries were always in the cold. I think there's something about cran that has associated with cold. So I think Cranrich, like rich with cran, I just think is somehow related to that. So I'm thinking like rich with cran, meaning like coldness. And this is where the poem to me gets kind of weird, because he starts to give us a moral, I guess. But Mousey, thou art not alone. In proven foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men gong off galley, and lay us not but grief and pain for promised joy. So let me go back there. He says, but Mouse, you're not alone in proving that foresight may be vain. I can build this house, and it will last through the winter, and it will be good for me. You're not alone in showing that, building a house and try to somehow predict your future could go badly. Because he said, the best laid schemes of mice and men often go awry, is what that means. And they leave us nothing but grief and pain for promised joy. So we make all these plans, they're supposed to work out well for us, but even the best laid plans can go terribly and leave us with nothing but grief, despite all of our abilities to do otherwise. Like random crap sometimes just happens to you. You ever notice that? Like, you were set, everything was good, and then boom, something comes out of nowhere and you gotta take care of it. It happens all the time. Literally, you can even do everything you can to prevent a thing from happening, and it can still happen. God, I'm trying to think of just simple things like I was driving over here, like you'll know where or it's over there, I guess, but where the Academy and Louse and stuff are. I was in the parking lot there, and I was driving, and a car came around, like, as you're leaving the parking lot, if you're coming out on this side, which would be the Academy side, and you're leaving the parking lot, but it's the part of the road that, like, is really up close, where you could, like, hit somebody walking right out of the store if you're not careful. So that side of the parking lot, not the far side that's over by, like, Chick-fil-A. But, like, I was leaving there, and I'm driving, right? And I had just gone to the Greenville real quick. I said, I'll just go there real quick, pick up this garbage disposal. Then I'm going to save money on the garbage disposal. Rather than have somebody install it, I'll install it myself, work with electricity and tools, which I am capable of as long as there's YouTube. And then I'll go home, right? And I was like, this will be easy. I can do this. And so I'm leaving the parking lot. And the only reason I was even going out this side of the parking lot, I would have just gone straight home, is because my wife said, oh, they called and your contacts are in. And I was like, oh, I need to see. So I'll go ahead and go over there, get my contacts. And so I left this side of the parking lot, and this car was coming. There's a curve there. I don't know if you know, but there's a curve, and this car's coming. It looks really close to me, so I'm like, oh, let me ease over just a little bit. I didn't ease over very much. Like, I just eased over far enough where he wouldn't hit me, because he did that thing where he was trying to cut the corner, and I was like, I don't want him to hit me. That would be bad. And so when I kind of came around the corner, I felt a big old bump, like, and I was like, oh my gosh. That was big. And then I go around and I can feel my tires going, and I'm like, oh crap. And so I get out of my car, I go around the curve, and I get on the curb on the next road that I turn onto, and I just kind of pull over, and I check, and sure enough, I had a blowout tire. I was like, this sucks. Here I was trying to save myself money, and it's going to cost me probably $100 for a new tire. What now? You got stuck in the mud? So your tire still worked, right?
I guess, kind of, yeah. I had center and couldn't get out, and so I walked in class Tuesday night looking like
haggard. Well, it was funny, too, because while I was sitting here and assessing the fact that, yes, I had a blowout, I heard something else, and then I turned back and I look, and the car that was turning on the road behind me, it had a flat tire. I think it did the same thing, because it's a weird curve. Most curbs are rounded. This one's not. It's sharp like a sidewalk. And what's sharp, and it actually, the way people have hit it so many times that the top of it's blackened, so it looks like it's curved. And it's really not. It's a sharp point that a stair comes up to right next to it. So it's literally a sharp point of concrete just sitting there, and you can't realize it. If you get slightly close to it, it's not like a regular curve. You go boom, 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 boom. You just smack right into it with your wheel well. Like it just, and it literally just popped my tire. Like it just popped it. And then my spare was flat, so I had to walk over to Discount Tire with my spare, get them to fill it up, so I could then take my car actually over to Walmart, where I had road hazard protection, which actually helped me a little bit. The tire only ended up being about $60. But still, I thought, I'm going to go save myself some time and money by running to Greenville. I didn't bring anything to read or nothing, because I'm going to be there real quick. And I ended up sitting at Walmart for 2 hours with nothing to drink, because I didn't bring anything to drink either. I bring stuff to drink everywhere, and I was like, I have my Dr. Pepper halfway full. It'll make me until I get to Lowe's and back. So I carefully planned out the trip and tried to hurry so I could get back into the garbage disposal so I could get stuff done. But the best laid schemes of mice and men often go awry. Cost me more money. So dumb. And you're just never prepared for that sort of thing, right? You try as much as you can to prepare, and it's just random crap happens. You can't do anything about it. And that's exactly what happened to here, Mr. Mouth. He's like, I'll build a house. Crap. I happened to build in a tornado zone. But the tornado was a giant piece of metal. And this is where I think the poem gets so weird to me. And I don't know that Robert Burns, I'd like to think that Robert Burns actually does not identify personally with his speaker. Because I think the speaker, to me, it's kind of a jerk move what he does at the end here. Did you notice this? He says, still thou art blessed compared with me. The present only toucheth thee, but oh, my backward cast my eye on prospects drear. And forward though I cannot see, I guess in fear. So this is what he says. He says, still you're blessed compared with me. The present only touches thee. But oh, I backward cast my eye on prospects drear. And forward though I cannot see, I guess in fear. He says, Mouse, you don't understand, though. You're blessed. Because I think about the past all the time and regret decisions that I've made. And I worry about my future and what's going to happen. But you're only ever touched by the present. You don't think about the past. You don't think about the future. You only think about the now. You're lucky. Yeah, what a nice thing to say after you bust somebody's house down. Like, it's just such a weird thing. It's like if some terrible political decision was made that affected everybody negatively, and they're like, here's a good example. Like, you ever heard of Jerry Falwell? Or like, you know those TV preachers, right? Like the TV preachers. Well, there's this one preacher recently who it was him and another TV preacher having like conversations, like mega church preachers having conversations like on this video. And the one guy was like trying to justify like the church buying a jet. And this other guy, like, he really loves planes. And he was like, see, the church members, they just don't, the people who are on the outside, they don't get it like our church members get it. He said, sometimes you got to get somewhere fast. And you can't just take your little Cessna you have out back and go fly it over there. You got to get your jet. And sometimes, maybe you don't just need the one jet, maybe you need another. Because you got a whole lot of goodwill you got to go do. And and the other preacher realized kind of what was happening, that they sound just like money grubbers. And he was like, yes. Well, let's get to what we were talking about. But it was like, somebody could say like, well, what are you doing to feed the poor? It's like, you don't understand. This jet takes me places where I can talk about how we feed the poor. What? But the jet you could have fed the, it's like people who just like have no true concept of like the difficulties of others. And I know I feel bad about myself too. I think that's starting to happen to me over time. Because I've had a decent job for so long, I start to forget things like, students not being able to pay for books. I'm like, well, you need it for class, you just buy it. Maybe you don't eat out as much the next month. And that's how I'm thinking. And then some people are thinking, I might not be able to eat the next month, like if I buy the book. So, and I'm like, oh, right. Or I'm thinking like, you pull out your iPhone. I'm like, oh, you don't have a smartphone. Interesting. What do you do then? Or like, you open Microsoft Word. I don't have that. I can't pay for it. Well, what do you do then? And so I start to like, I forget. Like I'm thinking, It reminds me of this one time where somebody asked Oprah really quick on like a cell phone camera video. They were like, Oprah, I have a question for you real quick. What would be a great cheap gift to get my mother on Mother's Day? And she says, well, there's actually this really great, like, I don't know what she said it was, like a spa day package or a coat or like some kind of purse over at blah, blah, blah in New York. And it's only $100. And he said, and she says, what if we don't have $100? What if we're looking for like way cheaper? She said, you don't have $100? Like it was hard for her to understand a concept where like, as just a Mother's Day gift, you didn't have $100 to spend on your mother. Because you get beyond that perspective of what the little man needs, like what normal people who don't have any money, and he's like you don't get it, Mouse. This is no big deal for you, right? Because you already don't have anything. Like me, though, I worry all the time about like stuff, So it's very like myopic and thinking about himself and very selfish. And then we have to a Louse, which is also interesting. It says to a Louse. You know what a Louse is?
A lice?
Yeah, it's lice. It's one lice. Like we have dice, and then one die is one dice is a douse. It's a die. I want to see if I can trick anybody. So he's talking to this little louse that he sees on a lady's bonnet at church. Okay, so she's wearing a bonnet, and he sees a louse on it, and he's like, "Oh, there's a louse up there." And he starts talking to it, not out loud, I'm sure. But he says, "Ha! Where are you gone, you crawling furly? Your impudence protects you sorely. I cannot say, but you strunt rarely or goes in lace. Though faith, I fear you dine but sparely on such a place." So he's like, "Where are you going, you crawling wonder? Your impudence protects you sorely. I cannot say, but you strut rarely over gauze and lace. Though to be sure, I fear that you dine but sparely on such a place." Essentially, like, where are you going? What nerve you have? You sure do seem to strut in your office. To be honest with you, I'm pretty sure you're not going to find much to eat on such a place. Like, you're not going to find much to eat up there. And he explains why he doesn't think that lice is going to find much to eat in the next part. Ye ugly, creeping, blasted wonder, detested, shunned by saunt and sinner, how dare you set your foot upon her? So fine a lady. Go somewhere else and seek your dinner on some poor body. And as he says, you ugly, creeping, blasted wonder, you're detested, you're shunned by saint and sinner. How dare you set your feet upon her? So fine a lady. Go somewhere else and seek your dinner on some poor body. It's like she's a rich, fine woman. Go find some poor person, some dirty person to eat from, because you're not going to get much here. Not, of course, knowing what a lice goes for, or a louse. I've actually read that it has nothing to do with actually even hygiene. They're attracted to, like, for some reason, once you hit puberty, they tend not to be attracted to you, but they can be if it's, I guess if you don't wash regularly, maybe that would affect it, but because I would think just the running water would hit enough of them where they couldn't have piles of it in your hair. And so he says, on some poor bodies where you'll find your nourishment. Swift, in some beggar's half-it squattle, there you may creep and sprawl and sprattle, with either kindred jumping cattle and shawls and nations, where horn nor bane nor down settle your thick plantations. So he says, swift or quick, sprawl in some beggar's half-it? Oh, swift in some beggar's locks, sprawl. It was 3 different words. There you may creep and sprawl and struggle with other kindred, jumping cattle in shoals and nations, where horn nor bane, and it says here that means fine-tooth comb made of horn or bone. So no comb will unsettle your thick plantations. And he talks about, like, they're the jumping cattle, the lifestars. Like, you could basically have your own little plantation in there, in the poor person's head, where no comb will unsettle you. Go find some poor person. Like, poor people don't use combs, but the fine lady does. And you'll be unsettled. You don't want that. No, go find some place you're never going to be messed with. You're not going to take a bath. Not gonna be using a comb. Nah. Just go find you like a nice, unused, dirty place on a poor person. That'll help you. Now, haud you there, you're out of sight, below the fatrel snug and tight. Na faith ye yet, you'll be not right till you've got on it, the very topmost towering height of Mrs. Bonnet. And says, now hold you there, you're out of sight. Below the ribbon ends, snug and tight. And no faith ye yet, he says, confound you. You'll not feel right until you've gotten onto it, the very topmost towering height of her bonnet. He's like, he's strutting. He's trying to get to the top. He's trying to be like, I have conquered this vessel. It's how he's looking at the Louse. You know, he's like cocky little bug, like trying to be like, look, I've conquered this very fine lady. That's how I think he views him. Like you will not be happy till you get to the top of this thing. Ma sooth, right bold ye set your nose out, as plump and grey as only grows it. Or for some rank mercurial roset or fell red smedum, I'd gie ya such a hearty toss it, would dress ye drodum. He said,
confusing. I could not understand that whole paragraph. I was like, what does that mean?
He said, it's kind of like, oh my, or I think sooth is like truth. It's like to be true, or something. I mean, I think it's almost like saying, oh my. Oh my, quite boldly you set your nose out, as plump and grey, which you have a plump grey nose, as any gooseberry. Oh, for some rank mercurial rosin, or sharp red powder, I'd give you such a hearty dose of it would spank your butt, or kick your butt, is basically what he's saying. So I don't really know if this rosin or this sharp powder, it was something that was used at the time to kill lice. And he says, oh, if I had some with me, I would give it to you, and it would knock you the heck out. And you deserve it. You get your butt whooped, Mr. Louse, being so bold. And that's kind of how he's approaching this here with him. I would not been surprised to spy on an old wife's flannen toy, or even some bit duddy boy on his wild coat. But Mrs. Fine Lenardi, fya, how dare you do it? I would not have been surprised to spy you on an old wife's flannel cap. Or, it says perhaps, I really think it's even. Or even some bit ragged boy on his wild coat, his undershirt. But Mrs. Fine, this type of branded, or a certain shape bonnet. On Mrs. Fine bonnet. Ugh. It's kind of like Fies, like one of those old sayings, like, psh, you know, kind of like their expression for that. How dare ye do it? He's like, I would expect to see you on these people, this other person, these poor people, not her, not this bonnet. This, and even gives it almost like a special name, like to show how it. And then he's talking to the lady, I guess. I don't know if she's actually doing this or he's just thinking, please don't. Oh, Ginny, do not toss your head and set your beauties all abread. Ye little ken what cursed speed that blast he's making. The winks and fingerings I dread are notice taken. I guess it sounds like she's actually realized there's a Louse up there now, and now she's freaking out and she's trying to get it all. She's like, don't toss your head around and set all of the beautiful things that you've put in place all abroad. You little can what cursed speed the blast he's making. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. Though you are, however, getting a bunch of winks and finger ends, and people are taking notice. So maybe if you just let the Louse stay up there, maybe you don't get a lot of attention for it, but now that you've done what you've done, you probably can't get rid of him, and you've got a bunch of attention paid to you, so. And he always has this weird little, with these poems, these two poems, he's got this weird little moral at the end that's kind of weird when you think, oh, with some power the gift ye give us to see ourselves as others see us. It would free many a blunder free us and foolish notion. What airs and dress and gait would lay us in even devotion. He said, oh, would some power the gift give us to see ourselves as others see us. It would from many a blunder free us and foolish notion. What airs in dress and gait would leave us, and even devotion. It's a very interesting conclusion to the poem. He's saying, I wish we could have the gift to see ourselves as other people see us. So we could look at ourselves and say, this is how other people see me. So now it would help you like adjust the way that you're looked at, or that you would look at yourself. It would free us from many a blunder and a foolish notion, and all these airs of dress and gait and posturing would leave us, and even false devotion. And I think he's talking kind of like, the woman with the coins, the 2 bits or whatever she puts in she had both 2 mites, right? Who throws into like the contribution cup or whatever, and Jesus was talking about it. He says, "Oh, she gave everything she had," and all the other ones like tossing what they're trying to make the most noise, and their coins hit the cup or whatever. I think he's specifically talking there about, that's what he's saying about what devotion, like you're supposedly devoted to, the religion that you're following, sitting there in church. Yet here you are also wearing this fancy bonnet and looking nice and, doing all this posturing stuff, not for the church you're in at all, but for the people around you who are viewing you. And he's almost saying, like, if a louse is going to come and get on you no matter what, then we're really all equal. We all look the same, and if only we had the way to look at ourselves and see that there's no reason we need to do that at all. I've always thought, like, and I could tie this in a little bit, but I've always thought it's very strange how it's generally expected of women to wear makeup, not men. But it's like this weird sort of pressure, I guess, at some point that women have to like wear makeup, and then once you've started, you can't stop. But then people say that men age gracefully. There's this old phrase where like men age gracefully and women do not. But I think it's because of the whole makeup thing and the trying to look younger all the time, and everything in society is like geared toward making women try to stay young forever. The pressure's not as high on men, although it's getting worse, definitely. But that's all just posturing. That's all just trying to look good to others. The way they look good at the hair dye, all that kind of stuff falls into that as well. Like, I can't go gray. Why? Everybody did forever. You know that it's actually pretty funny that people didn't used to wear underarm deodorant. Like, that wasn't a thing, and they didn't shave their underarms. That was something that was sort of invented in the 20s. Like, they basically ran ads in like women's magazines that said, "Well, you don't want your armpits to smell bad." And they were like, "Oh, well, no, I guess I don't." But it was something like they were looking for like new ways to make money, and they realized if we just imply that your armpits shouldn't smell, which they always have, maybe we can convince people to put something in their armpits that keeps them from smelling. And it worked. That's one of those things I'm really glad it worked. What now?
It's the same with the mouthwash. That's very clean.
Yeah, it was mouthwash. I read that the other day as well. Did you read that on Reddit?
I've seen a YouTube video about it.
Because I saw just recently, like a couple days ago, on Reddit, there was a story about mouthwash and how it started the same way. It doesn't actually necessarily, like, why shouldn't people have bad breath? It's a weird, you think about that. Somebody's going to come up with a pill someday that makes you, like, when you take it, it makes, like, your poop have a certain smell to it. Like, it'll smell like strawberries. So instead of, like, how we have in the bathroom, too, we have air fresheners, right? Because we have this weird thing where, like, if you poop, it's not supposed to smell. But there was this great song a long time ago that I heard. I think it was by Outkast. And it's like, "Oh, girl, you think that your poop don't stink. But I can't remember the rest. It was something like, but it says, he was really talking about what she says and what she does. And it's like, but you open up your mouth, and everything, it smells like poo, poo, poo. And he says, everything, it smells like poo, poo, poo. And I love that song because it's like you think your crap don't stink. It's one of those things, those phrases that we have, right? But it's not, crap is not the word. You know the word. But why shouldn't it? Why do we ever have had this thing where we should say, the place where we poop should not smell like poop? Isn't that weird that we've done that? It's like all this stuff we've done for like posturing, and we've added like all these social requirements that we have to keep up with. I really think it's honestly we need something to kind of worry about once we've gotten past the simple survival part of humanity. We figured that one out because we have enough of a human machine going now that we can keep ourselves fed and clothed for the most part. At least the middle class can keep itself fed and clothed. But we need things to, like, we need new conflicts. Like, well, we smell as though we perspire, but we do perspire. Well, right. And like a bathroom smells as though there was poop in it, but there was. Yes, but it shouldn't. Why? Because this is not right. But like, so we found these new conflicts that exist that didn't before, that we have to, like, and it turns into, now this is not a posturing thing, but it turns into when we go to, home and, like, we sit down, and you ever sit and you get comfortable and I like to be it's so weird. I like to be in a house that's air conditioned to the point where I can throw a blanket on. I don't know why I like that so much. It's kind of like the same thing with apple pie and ice cream. You want the apple pie to be hot and the ice cream to be cold. You don't want them to be the same temperature where they're, like, mixed, and, like, that ice cream is, like, lukewarm now and the pie is lukewarm. You try to eat it almost as fast as you can so you can get cold and hot together. It's like I like to sit in a house where I've got a blanket on and it's cold. I don't get it. I do, but it's just, I love it. So I'm literally paying more money so that I can have the pleasure of having a blanket on. It's so strange. But I'll get all settled, and then another, like, thing happens where I realize I left the remote way over there. And I'm like, it's almost like you think of this as a horrible thing. I've got to take the blanket off, get cold again, get up, walk over there, grab it, go sit back down, and it's going to take time. And a lot of times we buy things sometimes we buy, like, cars and stuff, not because we necessarily, I'm one of those people who buys a car purely for function. I don't care how ridiculous I look driving it. My wife always told me, like, I drove this little Versa. I mean, if I thought a minivan was the best car, I'd drive a minivan. I was like, I have lots of room. But the Versa was like this little car my wife claimed was a woman's car. And now I drive this Mustang. And the only reason I'm driving the Mustang that goes because she got pipes put on it. The only reason I drive it is because the Versa no longer drives anymore because the rod flew through the engine. Or it blew a rod. And so we had this extra car because my wife loves cars. And so I'm driving it. That's the only reason I'm even driving that car. Is because of that. But she's, like, very much like, she wants to have, like, the nice big Tahoe, which we don't have. So I won't let her get it. Because I'm like, I don't want to waste money on Tahoe. But we did have a nice Equinox that she bought right before we got married, because she realizes if once we got married I have a say, and she didn't want that to happen, so she went ahead and bought the car. Which we're almost done paying for. And I was like, this is the last time I'm going to get away with this. I was so pissed. But she was so clever too. She took a picture of her with it and the keys, sent it about 6 hours before she got home, so she knew I would have a chance to get angry and walk around the house and pace. And then when she finally walked through the door, I'd be like, "You're lucky I'm not mad anymore." She's like, "Yeah, I know." She was like, "I know you don't stay mad for long. It was calculated." But all this stuff, the cars, everything, the way you keep your house, and our house is lovely inside right now. Like, we got, we turned the front room into a dining room instead of just this place where nobody goes. So now it's like you can actually use it. But it's like we have this dining room. We don't invite people over really very much. But we have this room that's there in case people come. And we fix the house up occasionally and, change things here and there so that if people come over, like, once in a blue moon, we've got a nice house for them. I really honestly think she's doing it for herself. But it's also like you wouldn't want somebody to come in and see that your house isn't perfect. It's such a weird thing that we do. We do this all the time. But if we would just realize that none of that crap matters, and it's fine for poop to stink, it's fine for armpits to smell, and sometimes people get lice. Maybe the world will be a better place. But it's the weird thing, because in that other one, I feel like there's no way he means what he's saying in To a Mouse, right? Because in To a Mouse, I feel like he says, "Oh, but you're blessed compared to me because I can look at the past, the future." I feel like that's a really kind of a jerk move to the mouse. But I don't feel like this is a jerk move where he's saying, "I wish we could see ourselves as others see us," so he wouldn't do all this silly posturing and, spending money on things to make us look better to other people while we could be giving that money to the church is almost what he implies here at the end. But that sounds like a good thing. So I wonder if he really meant for me to think that it is worse to be a human. and he's not being at all like unfair at the moment. I just feel like he is being unfair. I don't know. Maybe he really means that. It's probably is true. Is that the mouse is so ignorant it can't possibly know what just happened to it. It's going to be like, build a new house. And it's just going to immediately start. It's going to find a place to go and live, and it's going to immediately start building again. Like they don't have like this super long memory or anything. It just is kind of like instinctual memory. I should warn you that by the way, the quiz is going to be open after class over Smith, Burns, and Blake. If it's not already, it might actually be open right now. So you can do that. Wordsworth, though there aren't many to read, the ones that I expect you to write about, Lions Composed, A Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey, which I will often just say call Tintern Abbey, and Ode, Intimations of Immortality, I'll probably just call it the Ode. Ode is incredibly hard, and Tintern Abbey is somewhat hard. I took away people talking about Wandered Lonely as a Cloud because everybody just said the same stuff. Like, I remember sometimes I sit down and I'm not thinking very hard. And I'm like, yeah. But I want people to think hard. And so, Tintern Abbey, Ode, Intimation of Immortality. Tintern Abbey is about 3 pages, and Ode, Intimation of Immortality is about 4 pages. So you need to set a little bit of time aside to try to understand those before you write about them. It's just a fair warning. And they're pretty, the way he writes them, they're pretty heady. It's all about like memory and the importance of memory and what it means to remember and how we can't actually get back to the past, but we can remember it in its imperfect form. So that's kind of good, but it's weird when he's talking about memory. So if you know going in, you're reading about memory, then it might help. But I think that's it. Y'all have a great one. I mean, Thomas Shanter, I mostly don't cover anything deep. It's just more or less that it's he gets drunk and you don't really know if he's imagined this little ghost story, if it's real. It could be either, based on the way that it's talked about. But he just gets so drunk that he goes through this weird sort of like fever dream situation.
He's in like hell or something.
Like what?
Was he like in the underworld or something?
Yeah, kind of. It was like that whole witches, like they were all around the fire.
And it was still like, maybe he was still drunk or something?
Yeah.
Couldn't understand. I really didn't.
I mean, that's basically it. I don't spend a lot of time with that one on purpose. Because to me, it's just more or less a ghost story. But all the other teachers assign it, like who assign Britlit, like do Britlit. So, man, it just depends.
Okay.
Like, I just assign it because I more or less feel the pressure from other people's syllabi to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all have a good one.
Okay.
Don't forget discussion post quiz.